What's up, you guys? The AWO Western Spotlight Episode 2, focusing on this man, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the toughest son of a bitch ever in the WWE. And yes, give me a hell yeah, Ambassador. Just a minute. I got to invite people in, which I'll be doing. But when this is Western Spotlight Episode 2, we're going to talk about the career of Stone Cold Steve Austin, what he meant to the WWE, how big he was, and yeah. And in just a minute, let me just invite some people. I think, yeah, I got the link here. Is this it? No, this is not it. Excuse me, let me do it again. I'll be right back. Okay. Here we go. And Ambassador, here we go. Here we're getting you on. And anybody's free to come on and talk Stone Cold. So yeah, let's get rid of this stupid banner, guys. Well, not stupid banner. It's not a stupid banner. Stupid banner. But yeah.
Give me a hell yeah! I said give me a hell yeah!
And with that, we got Ambassador. I just got it on in the chat, in the stream. Now I just gotta get rid of this stupid banner. Brand, whatever. Hey, Ambassador.
Hey, Aaron, how you doing?
Doing quite well, man. You know, relaxing, doing my stream. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Western Spotlight, yeah, episode 2. The first one was The Rock. Also, so I'm gonna put my cam on. Show my face. Because I got a Stone Cold Funko.
Oh, dude, that's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Yeah, I got this, a couple months ago? Yeah.
Well, when you announced a few weeks ago that you were doing Stone Cold, I about jumped out of my shorts. And that's not hyperbole, because I was like, Stone Cold Steve Austin started off as Stunning Steve Austin, and then back when he had hair, and started out as a heel. Kind of was a heel his early part of his career. He was brought in by Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, obviously. Yeah. And honestly, he has been, ever since he really took off with that first King of the Ring, where he just owned the whole stinking thing. He has been, even when he was a heel for a while again during the corporation, the corporate ministry, or just the corporation. And then when he kind of took sides with the during the invasion.
Oh yeah.
Stone Cold has always been one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. And he's no nonsense, he's gruff, he's loud, he is honestly, I think, one of the most charismatic wrestlers I have ever watched. And I've seen some of the real greats. I never had the opportunity to go to a live wrestling show ever in my life. I watched it on pay-per-view, on cable, on regular network TV. And if Stone Cold was there, anytime you hear that glass shattering, your blood just absolutely starts pumping. You're like, yes, the badass is here.
That's the birth right there. It's the birth of Stone Cold.
Yeah. Austin316 says, I just kicked your ass.
Yeah. It made fun of Jake the Snake Roberts, because Jake the Snake Roberts at the time was religious, born again Christian, and he was like, "You're talking about your psalms." Well, Austin 360 says, "I just whooped your ass," or something like that.
Yeah, and there has not been a day in my life since I was in my teens that I did not respect this guy and the work that he did. And even when he got hurt and he couldn't wrestle on a regular like he used to, and they came up with all these inventive ways to keep him relevant, to keep him in the thing,
Yeah.
because he was a huge part of the Attitude Era for WWE, even when it was still WWF. He was a huge part of the Attitude Era, and some of okay, everybody knows the big story arc that he was a part of, the ongoing feud with Vince McMahon, and you have to admit they played that thing up so well. They orchestrated it, they choreographed it, the whole shoot match. They did it so well, and even when he went to even when Stone Cold went up against the D-Generation X, and he pulled all that crap on them. I watch clips of it and I laugh now because it's so damn funny. And he's like, I remember one of his best quips, one of his best burns was like, X-Pac. The only reason I kind of like you is because you said your name sounds like Six Pack.
Oh yes,
And
yes.
he had such good timing, and he knew how to cut good promos, and he knew how to jaw jack, and he knew how to talk, and that was one of the really great things about Stone Cold that I really, as a fan, I really appreciated.
Yeah. Stone Cold, yeah. Like I said earlier, his career, he was studying Steve Austin in WCW. And then part of the first the family with he was managed by ironically Paul Heyman,
Yeah,
part of stable, and then he became the tag team, the Hollywood Blondes with the late great Brian Pillman. You
yeah,
remember that? And then
yeah. I
remember the
do
way,
remember that. I remember that very distinctly. Yeah,
yeah, do you
and
remember
I
the
knew
way
he
he
was.
got fired from WCW? You remember how he got
Yeah,
fired from the?
he got fired. He got let go from WCW,
Do you hear the
and
story?
he didn't know what he was going to do.
Do you hear the story? Like Bischoff called him, and Austin's like, "Tell that don't go so Bischoff, so I'm not here." And Bischoff could hear him on the phone because that was like his
Hmm.
first wife at the time. Like Austin had like 3 or 4 wives, and that's the thing his first wife, and he's like, "Tell that don't go some bitch, I'm not home." And Bischoff heard it, and he heard it on the other line.
Yeah, WCW lost a really great wrestler, a really great performer when they lost Austin.
Oh,
But
I can name him more. Like I can name Foley and
oh
Triple
yeah,
H. Like,
well, and you look at Austin's career, particularly especially when he was in the WWF. He went up against some of the biggest and the toughest, and some of them that were just the same size as him. He backed down from no one. Now, I know
yeah,
everybody says, well, a lot of it's choreographed, a lot of it's scripted. There are parts of that which are true. But, the way he made you feel inside. Like I said, if you were at a live show or even if you were watching on TV or if you're watching a pay-per-view and you heard that glass shatter and you heard that music playing, your blood just started pumping because you knew, well, as old JR would say, business is about to pick up. And I positively, anytime Stone Cold was in anything, my eyes were glued to the television set because he kind of represented an aspect of myself, the part of myself that doesn't give a rip about what anybody has to say or what anybody thinks. He just cuts loose and he says exactly what he thinks. But here's the other funny thing: he has a really good, I think he has a really good sense of humor,
yes, he
and
does.
you see that in certain segments that you watch from the past, particularly with the Attitude Era and everything, especially the what. Who knew you could get a word over as simple or a phrase simply, what? What?
Yeah.
What?
The only problem
But
with that chat now, it's been used for everything as an annoying thing. And with Austin, it works, but now in wrestling, it's just something that annoys people. It doesn't work
yeah,
now, unfortunately.
yeah, because it's kind of like with Steve Carell, and that's what she said.
Yeah,
Steve Carell owns that phrase. It's the same thing with Austin with Stone Cold. He owned the what chant,
exactly.
and he gave that thing, and it was just such a simple thing, one word, what? And you would hear the what chants. And sometimes he would just be standing in the ring and he would just have the biggest damn grin on his face. And he'd be
Yeah,
like, he's like, I can't believe I got these people to actually start chanting one word.
yeah. Like who
But
would thought the word "what" would like get over? Really, seriously, huh? Like,
would be so damn funny.
if you had that kind of charisma, had that kind of popularity, you could get any word over. And
Oh
Austin was
yeah.
one of them, and like The Rock could probably get any word over it too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and the attitude there. Austin, like, I know some people disagree with me. Like, I think Austin, I think he's the focus, the focus point of saving WWE from being going out of business because WCW had them on the ropes, and it
Oh yeah.
forced WWE to change their kid-friendly ways to a more
Well,
adult-friendly
yeah, and
way.
that was and that was the whole attitude era of the
Yeah.
WWF or WWE, and it was I think it's honestly one of the best eras that wrestling has ever had. I
It's
really
nothing
do. I
like
mean,
it.
especially the WWE. It was one of the best eras they ever had because it was raw, it was raucous. You never knew what the hell was going to happen, and at any moment that ring could turn into a freaking war zone. And in
Yeah.
certain instances, Stone Cold would be right smack dab in the middle of that ring, the one causing the ruckus to break out. And I remember, I've watched many clips of his old stuff, of his old matches, of his old promos and whatever. And I've learned some of the terminology for that's used in wrestling. On like three or four different occasions, he had some of the biggest pops ever. I mean,
Oh
absolutely
yeah.
positively ever. There had been such a build
He
up
still
for a
gets it when he
match.
ever appears. He still gets the biggest pops.
Well, of
Even the
course.
over the current superstars now. He still gets the bigger pop.
Well, of course, because he is now elevated to they elevated to, he's in the Hall of Fame now. Been elevated to icon status, which is
Yeah,
appropriate because
definitely.
he is one. He's
Yeah.
earned that. And the one thing I love is I love watching the podcast that he does, um, that I get to catch on Facebook or on YouTube or whatever. And he's talking with his old wrestling buddies and everything about some of these old
Yes.
stuff, and it really goes behind the scenes about what happened during his time in the WWF. And you really get an insight to just how demanding and how time consuming and just how much of a wear being a wrestler is for these guys and in these women as well. And I may sound like the biggest Stone Cold fanboy that there is, and oh hell, I probably am
Mark.
one amongst many. But
It's
for
okay.
me, and growing up in the '90s, Stone Cold was up there. He was like in the top 10 of wrestlers, and he stayed there. He never left the top 10 of wrestlers that were active during the '90s and even going into 2000s, even when he got hurt. And it really sucked that his injuries cut his career short because he had such a good run.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, his injuries caught up with
It's
him. The injury to his neck, the
it
injuries to
was
his knees.
he had it was such a short one because of his injuries. Because like
Yeah.
when he got injured in '97. He
Hmm.
got injured in '97 from Owen Hart. Like, don't blame. It's not Owen Hart's fault. Owen
Yeah.
Hart's great talent too. Rest in peace, Owen Hart. What happened to
Yes.
him is a
Rest in
different.
peace.
What happened to him is a different story. And but he that really injured his neck. He had to change his whole wrestling style because if you watch Austin's style in WCW, he was more of a high flyer, more of a technical wrestler.
Yeah.
When he got hurt, he had to change into a brawler style where he can't
Yeah.
do those high technical moves and stuff because it would change. Well, change his character, but it would do more damage to himself.
Exactly.
And
Well, honestly, you know, with his persona and how they branded him and everything,
yeah,
I think he worked much better as the brawler. I
what?
think that's where he really found his niche. He was like the blue collar a non-traditional baby face, even though he would never categorize himself as that. But he I think the style that he adopted after his neck injury, being the brawler, being the rough and tumbler, it worked for him better because
Yes.
you look at, I mean, I guarantee you now, a vintage Stone Cold F Fear T-shirt or a what T-shirt would probably go for a small fortune because
We'll
that's
get to
how
this
popular
stuff.
and how relevant he has remained.
Oh yeah.
That is the truly impressive
They
thing about
kind of
Stone Cold.
they kind of took the Becky Lynch shirt, the man shirt, kind of made it. They took that from the Stone Cold Steve Austin. Um. I'll show you. You've seen the avatar already, but I'll just let the people know what I mean.
Mhm.
Okay, so here we go. See the man right there? That's what they kind of took
Yeah.
it from the Stone Cold. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen you use that. I've seen you use that picture before.
Yeah.
And yeah, I you know,
And she kind of had
but
that character. She's kind of like the female version of that for like a year and a half,
mhm.
going against authority and stuff like that. Because that's what Stone Cold was, rebellious and going against authority.
Oh yeah.
I think it's
He
what
didn't.
people gravitated to him because we all had people like that, we bosses that we wanted to beat the shit out of. Like, don't
Oh
deny it,
yeah.
people. You know you wanted to.
Well, and and that was one of the really great things about Stone Cold is, like I mentioned before, he was kind of the blue collar type of baby face, semi baby face, because he didn't keep it as clean as most baby faces would.
No, he's more of
He,
a anti-hero baby face, not like
yeah,
clean
yeah, I
cut
think
in your
that.
baby face in like in the early '90s. If you think about Hogan was like a pure baby face, a pure good guy. Austin
Mhm.
was a baby face, but he was a different kind of baby. He was more of an anti-baby face than baby face.
Yeah, because he would fight dirty, but
Yeah,
people loved him for it. You know, he,
same with the Rock, same with the
yeah,
Undertaker.
he, yeah,
It
he
was the
would.
era then.
Yeah, because back then in the '90s with and into the 2000s, the Attitude Era, even your baby faces, they would fight dirty, but people still gravitated to them because they were going up against these really monolithic, huge heels, and they're like, yeah, you you pull a bear truck into the freaking stadium and you hose down McMahon and The Rock and
Yeah,
Briscoe
that's
him down with a
great.
beer hose, and people
And
cheered him for it. And
yeah,
you bring in
yeah.
a Zamboni and you ram it into the ring and you jump over the security and you tackle McMahon. You start wailing on him.
You
You
making
drop
penis pads with the fake gun gag.
you drop a freaking K rail on the DS Express.
Yeah,
You fill Vince's prize Corvette with cement. You do you beat the ever loving crap out of Scott Hall when the NWO came into the WCW for a while. And
yeah,
people, well, I mean, grant the NWO, they were the biggest heels, well, one of the
yeah.
biggest
But that
heels.
and
And
but when the NWO came in WWE, it wasn't the same. Like,
no, it wasn't even remotely the same. I remember the NWO, and this can be something you want to talk about another time, absolutely.
oh yeah, we'll
But
talk about that stuff.
I'll just say this very quickly: the rivalry, the feud between Stone Cold and the what was the remnants of the NWO, that one, that one segment, that one promo where Stone Cold kidnaps
Skull,
Scott
yeah.
Hall, yeah, Scott Hall, aka the former Razor Ramon,
Oh, and
and
with the beer stuff, right?
oh yeah, your
Because
mouth for
Skull had
drinking beer.
alcohol problems, beer and
He
alcohol.
did, yeah, he did, and I don't think. I think Stone Cold was playing up the part a little bit, but I think at the same time, I think he didn't want to try and push Hall that far because he knew the guy had a drinking problem, and that's why he stunned him when he gave him the beer. And but
Hmm.
that whole intimidation thing, you almost think it's real, as good as they played it up. And he's like, "You mind for drinking beer?
Yeah, yeah,
You gonna bother you if I drink a beer?" And then, of
yeah,
course, when he finally drives him back out in the truck to the ring, he throws him into the ring. He's like, "I'm gonna stomp this son of a bitch every time you all say what," and the crowd just goes for it, and they just start chanting. He's like, "I gotta stop it. These are my good stuff, my good boots or something." I can't remember exactly what he said, but
yeah. Yeah, I
You
remember.
know,
And then he had that match at WrestleMania, Stone Cold and Scott Hall, and
yeah.
unfortunately, that was Rock and Hogan, the same match, same event, WrestleMania.
Mhm.
And I'll just say this: the reason the NWO will never work in WWE is because Hogan returning as a heel was the biggest mistake.
Yeah, when Hogan turned heel back in the '90s, when he went to
Mm.
WCW and the whole the Outsiders and the NWO and all like that
That
started
worked
up, it worked. It
because they were
worked.
booing him. They were booing him. They were literally
Oh
booing him in the
yeah,
crowd.
because think about it. A lot of the people in those arenas, they grew up watching Hogan as kids or as
In
teenagers, and
WWF, yeah,
yeah, the WWF, and he was everyone's hero. He was the babyface of babyfaces. He was the
yep,
biggest babyface of all time. Yeah, Ryan, I actually remember watching
yeah.
that particular bash at the beach and
The one
everything. I
line
remember that.
When Bobby Brain says, "Whose side is he on?" That's when you knew.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And I'll say this: Bobby Heenan was one of the best color commentators
Oh
in
yeah,
wrestling. I put him right up there with JR. I put him right up there with Mean Gene. Although Mean Gene was more of a ring man, he did more of the interviews
interviews,
and the promos and stuff. But Heenan and Mean Gene
commentating
and
and managing. Per Heenan up there.
yeah, I would agree. I would wholeheartedly agree. But and you speak of
But
like great wrestling.
Jr. had a great connection with Austin though. So
Yes, he did. I mean, those two were buddies. I mean,
yeah,
let's see. Austin is from Texas. Jr. is from Oklahoma, if
Oklahoma.
I remember correctly. So they both had that blue collar feel to them and everything. Now, granted, Stone Cold never wore the cowboy hat, but you know what? He still had a lot of respect for Jr. He's
Yeah,
like, I mean, because Jr. I mean,
they knew each other in
Jr.
WCW.
Hmm?
They knew each other in WCW.
Oh, did
And
they
JR's
really?
always liked them. Always liked them.
Well, and there's a lot. When the announcers really have respect. I mean, granted, they're playing a bit of a performance themselves, obviously,
Yeah,
but when you've got that level of, because I imagine there were times when some of the wrestlers and the announcers really didn't get along all that well. I mean,
oh
I
yeah.
don't know for sure. I don't know any stories to quantify that, but I imagine there were probably some that just
There
didn't
are. I
jive.
just can't think of any.
Yeah, but the really cool thing about the relationship between JR and Stone Cold is anytime JR was in trouble, Stone Cold was there.
Oh
And
yeah,
he was like, "No, you don't mess with JR." He's like, "I'll stun your ass so damn hard."
yeah.
And some people have said that Stone Cold Stunner doesn't do as much damage as you may think, that a lot of people just play it up. That might be the case, but it was still a cool ass move. You drop a guy's neck
It's
across your
not.
shoulder.
Look, it's the impact of the move. Not exactly how powerful. It's the impact of the move.
Yeah, that's true too.
But yeah, like, cause it could come out of nowhere. Yeah. So what? There's other finishing moves that are probably stronger than a stunner. But you know what? It's the impact of the move that's that matters more than how powerful the move is. And a stunner has been used in variations to these days. Here's
Oh
the thing:
yeah,
all finishing moves at one point end up becoming just regular moves. Look at the DDT by Jake the Snake Roberts. That was such an instrumental move. That was such a first of its kind, and everybody does a DDT now.
yeah,
I mean, you and I could probably do a DDT and wouldn't finish off a guy.
yeah. Probably. I mean, if you look at both the diamond cutter and
Yeah,
the RKO, they are pretty much the exact same move.
I think
Just
this RKO has a little more height because I think Randy Orton can just jump a little bit higher.
yeah,
That's
he
all.
can. Well, that's the thing with Randy
Yeah,
Orton is he's able to he can get airborne,
yeah.
and if he catches you, or if you're airborne yourself, he can catch you, and he can deliver that RKO and just slam your head and face and neck right down into that mat of the ring, and your ass
Yeah.
is going to be knocked out cold for at least for a minute or two, long
Hmm.
enough for you to get covered.
So
But
what I think. So going back
go
to
ahead
Stone
here.
Cold, After
Yeah,
WCW, he went to ECW. He didn't wrestle in ECW, but Paul Heyman, because they had the connections to WCW, let him express his frustrations with WCW. Remember those backstage promos in ECW? Have you seen them? He didn't
uh,
wrestle. He didn't wrestle, but he was able to let him be himself. That's what Paul Heyman was able to do with Stone Cold before he became went to WWE. He even kind of
yeah.
dressed like Hogan a bit.
Well, like I said, I hadn't had a chance to really do a whole lot of digging into Stone Cold's career as much as I would have liked to.
I
I've
would
been kind of
show you
busy.
it, but I don't want to get I did
No,
it
no,
for
no,
The
no. You don't
Rock
have to
and I
show
got
me anything.
hit. I got
No, no,
hit.
I don't want. I don't want you. I don't want you. I don't want you getting.
I got hit on channels that's not even WWE channels, so just random YouTube accounts. That's how I got hit by
Yeah,
that too.
yeah. I understand. Believe me, Aaron. The struggle is real. I do understand it. But the
Stone Cold Hawk Austin. Yeah, basically. Yeah, and then he went to WWE and became the ringmaster. That was destined to fail. The ringmaster, like,
oh yeah, that was just an absolutely horrid idea. I mean, that has got to be one of the worst ring personas that you could possibly think of. I mean, honestly, even if he had never gotten his neck hurt and he had to change styles, I think Stone Cold. I think the Stone Cold persona was the best one he had,
oh yeah,
and
like
obviously it was the one that carried him through his entire career. And the thing I have to admit is the fact that Stone Cold, to varying degrees, has remained relevant, even though he is pretty much in retirement at this point. He's just simply too old and he's too messed up physically to wrestle anymore. But you have him come out.
he'll do a stunner here and there. Like,
Yeah,
doesn't take
exactly.
much.
Yeah, exactly. But you bring him out, and a crowd, an arena will just absolutely go wild
Yeah,
because everybody knows Stone Cold. Everybody has watched Stone Cold, and they know his matches, they know his career, they know his reputation.
they
He
know his
is.
impact on the mainstream media because in the Attitude Era, WWE really
Mhm.
look WWE in the '80s became very popular with pop culture, the rock and roll scene among the among not just Hollywood but among the news cycles, all that stuff. Like wrestling at one point wasn't like that. Hogan came along and Vince McMahon made it like among wrestling among the pop culture scene, this rock and roll music, stuff like that. And then it kind of died down a little bit in the early 90s. And when the Attitude Era came along, it happened again.
Oh yeah.
But
Well,
and
I mean,
the thing is, there was some the Attitude Era, the Stone Cold Steve Austin stuff. Not just Stone Cold, DX and all that stuff. You went to
oh
school
yeah.
with the merchandising, you're in trouble, man.
Well, yeah, but and that's the other cool thing, the fact that they were able to market and merchandise Stone Cold very well, but actually really simplistically.
Yeah.
And you think about it, that metallic skull with the blue
Yes.
eyes and the 316 imprinted on the forehead of the skull, that is absolutely iconic. It is.
The
It is
smoking
that.
skull belt. Yeah.
Yeah, and not to mention a couple of the vests that he wore during his career. One of them did have that metallic skull on the back
Hmm.
of it, and that obviously is a little bit of a reference back to the Terminator films.
Yes.
And I think honestly, it worked. It worked. It worked very well because it was iconic of the '90s because everybody knew about Terminator 2: Judgment Day. But the other big thing that skull is known for is, of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Hmm.
And you ask people who were some of your favorite wrestlers of the '90s and the early 2000s, and in anybody's list, I would bet you folding money that Stone Cold is on that list.
Oh yeah. Like definitely. He's on my list. I mean, The Rock was my favorite, but Stone Cold's on my list for sure. And is that his like that's the thing about Attitude Era, man. We had Stone Cold and The Rock, two megastars at the same time. Not even Hogan had that. Look, Hogan was an era with a lot of great wrestlers. He had Flair, Macho Man Randy Savage, the Warrior. The Warrior was close, but he wasn't a megastar like Hogan. But Hogan was the ultimate megastar. When The Rock and Hogan and Austin were around, they had two megastars.
Yeah, and they were smart in that they pitted Rock and Stone Cold against one another,
Yes.
and then other times they would have them working together. And
When they're both faces, yeah.
oh yeah, and you know what? And they both
Did
it
not like each
worked.
other, even as baby faces. They did not. They were like. They did not like each other, even though they were baby faces at the exact same time.
Well, they're like because here's the thing: they're two very different personalities. One is like a second or third generation wrestler in terms of Rock because of his father and his grandfather, I believe it is,
Yes.
or at least his father for sure.
His grandfather did wrestle too. That's why.
Oh, did
That's
he?
where he got
Okay.
his original name, Rocky Maivia. His father's name was Rocky Johnson. Rock and his grandfather was Chief Peter Maivia. So he combined those two names, Rocky Maivia. Thank God they changed that.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, but and here's the thing: you put
Oh yeah,
those
we'll
two
definitely
in
get
a-
to some of his matches, Ryan. We'll get to some of his matches.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Bret Hart versus Stone Cold. That was a incredible match because
That was the
I think it
match
was
he
one of the
bled and passed out.
yeah, and that
That was
was
a
the
double
one.
turn. That was a double turn.
Well, the interesting thing for me with that particular match is Bret up until that point had been a very technical wrestler, but he decided to change styles and become more of the brawler type, like you mentioned with Stone Cold. And he kind of kept that all the way through until he either I can't remember if Hart left or was released from.
He left. He signed WCW in the end as the Montreal Screwjob stuff at Survivor Series with Shawn
Oh
Michaels.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I know the Montreal Screwjob.
yeah.
Man, that's a whole mess in and of itself.
I think we're
I mean,
a different video. We'll get to that. Maybe if I do it,
yeah.
if I do a Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels thing, I don't know. Probably more of a Bret Hart video.
Well, you should do Aaron. To be honest, you could do one for both of them because
I'll definitely do one for both. But I think for the Screwjob, I think I'm gonna lean towards more the Bret Hart than Shawn Michaels.
yeah. Well, to the best of my memory, Stone Cold didn't really have. I mean, he had several like very impressive matches, but he didn't necessarily have like ones that are like really up there that are truly iconic.
Um, I think there's few. I think the one with The Rock at 17 was iconic. That was a great match. Unfortunately, the ending, people did not like the ending. That's when he joined the devil himself, Mr. McMahon.
Yeah.
I think the Bret Hart one was iconic when he bled and passed out with the sharpshooter. He had some good matches. Look, Stone Cold wasn't the best wrestler, but he knew how to tell a story in the ring.
Yes, he did.
And you know what?
Well,
Attitude Era. I'm gonna be hot take here. A lot of matches in Attitude Era were not good because it wasn't about the matches. It was about the storytelling in Attitude Era.
well, you know what? I think that's what a lot of people liked and a lot of people
Yes.
appreciate about the Attitude Era. The matches may not have been good, but the personalities and the storylines and so on, they were some of the very best. And like I said, every one of those wrestlers, male and female, had to be able to cut those promos and
Oh yeah, in Attitude Era.
do the jaw jacking back and forth and throw down the burns and lay down the law with one another, and it was believable. I mean, it could, but it was over. It was a little over the top at times, but at the same time, it did work, and
Yeah.
that's the truly impressive thing with when you've got people like Stone Cold working for you or working with you, even if you're a fellow wrestler. Because there were people who really respected Stone Cold and they wanted to work with him, and they knew that he played it square in
Yeah.
terms
What?
of.
Here's the thing.
Mhm. Go ahead.
If Stone Cold was on-air personality on when he was wrestling. That's not like him backstage. He was actually very well respected, and he respected among his peers and stuff. He was actually
Yeah.
he was very well liked. Didn't start I mean, he did have issues later on with the Brock Lesnar stuff, but that's not what I'm talking about. But he was very well respected. He didn't complain. He was not an asshole like, for example, like Shawn Michaels was. He wasn't a politician like Shawn Michaels was.
Right. Well, and here's the thing with Stone Cold, and this is one of the things, like I said, that I really like about him. You see what you get.
Yeah.
There's no underhandedness. There's no two face. There's no tricks or traps per se. If you're going into a match with him, and you know that you're going to get one hell of a match out of this guy, and it's going to be a good show. That's the most important thing.
Yes, definitely, because you want to see Stone Cold wrestle, whether the match is good or not. You want to see him wrestle. Like I can name some very underrated matches that people really don't talk about. Stone Cold. They talk about the WrestleMania matches, The Rock, the Bret Hart matches, the Shawn Michaels match at WrestleMania. But I could tell you some other matches that he was good in. There's two matches that dude love after WrestleMania 14.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or dude love. Look, Mick Foley's not the best wrestler either, but he knows what he's doing in the ring. And
Yes.
those two know what they're doing together because they work together and they're friends. Dude Love. What else is there? The Rock at Backlash. That's the one where he stunned the Rock on the announce table. Remember, the Rock had a camera, and Austin gave him the finger and stunned him on the announce table at the time. That was a good match. I like Austin. Like, there's a lot of matches that underrated matches people don't talk about. It's because he had a short career, and what else is there? I mean, he was only around in WWE at the top for about from '96 to 2003, and from from 2000 from '99 for about a year from '99 to the later 2000, he was out a year because of his neck. Remember the whole Survivor Series with Kishi? I did it for the Rock
Yes.
stuff. Yeah. So really, technically, he kind of wrestled for like 5 6 years, but there was times he couldn't because of his neck. Like and then 2002, he was away 2002 for a while because he didn't agree with him and Brock Lesnar being a Raw televised match. It should have been a pay per view match, and that's when he was in a bad place with WWE. So he came back later and won one final match with The Rock at WrestleMania because it got to a point where his neck was in bad shape. So he won the retirement match with The Rock at WrestleMania. That was the third pay per view match with The Rock at WrestleMania. He won The Rock specifically. Nobody else. He won The Rock specifically for that match. Because they're not like best friends, but they're acquaintances. They get along. They respect each other. But in terms of wrestling, he's always won The Rock because The Rock to him I think is his greatest rival other than Vince McMahon.
Oh yeah. Well, if like I mentioned a little while before, you think about it, there are very few wrestlers that were willing or even conceived of taking McMahon on one and
Hmm.
making him the heel. But that, like I said, that rivalry between Stone Cold and between McMahon, and even between Stephanie McMahon and Shane a little bit,
Yeah.
that's gonna be one of the best rivalries from the Attitude Era that there was, because it's very intense. It's got a good balance of humor in it, and it's by no means boring. That's
No.
the other big thing. You never knew what Stone Cold or even McMahon were going to say or do when they interacted with one another. And it impresses me to no end that this guy, Steve Austin, put the work and put the time in to bring us so many great iconic moments throughout his career. And he's enjoying his retirement now. And I say to him, "You've earned it." And as a fan, I say thank you so much for making my life and our lives just a little less boring, a little less dull and dreary. So the one thing I will say, I know a lot of people give wrestlers, both male and female, a lot of flack and a lot of guff because, well, it's all fake. It's all, no, it's real.
Ugh.
Go take a metal chair to the back of the skull and then tell me how real it is.
Just take a Ric Flair chop.
Yep, that too.
It's like
But
seriously.
but that's kind of the thing I wanted to I wanted to discuss for a minute. As I said, we know that the majority of this is fake, but these people are able to perform these personas and so on and give us really memorable characters and a lot of great storylines and a lot of great moments within their careers interacting with these other superstars or whatever. But for me, it's Stone Cold. I always search up first if I ever want to watch any like wrestling clips of. Oh, let's see, what can I find? And often I type in Stone Cold, and I'll just say matches. It doesn't matter what match. But I see
Yes.
him either one on one or tag teamed or sometimes just completely outnumbered. But
Hmm.
it amazingly it works.
Yeah. Yes. And like in terms of like let's see the era like with WCW was winning shot all over the wrestling world. Like WWE was quickly going out of business. Okay, like seriously, I think the rise of Stone Cold. I think it's a major factor. I mean, Vince McMahon finally did something right because he was going to go out of business,
Hmm.
and Vince McMahon did something good, and it's starting to get popular. You had Bret Hart, you had the Montreal Screwjob. The Montreal Screwjob created Vince McMahon character, 100% created Vince McMahon character. He got Tyson. And when Stone Cold and confronted Tyson,
Oh
that's
yeah,
when I would say the tide in WWE versus or WF versus WCW changed.
oh yeah, and the interactions between Stone Cold and Mike Tyson. They're some of the funniest dang things I've ever seen. I will say one of the best promos that Stone Cold ever cut, and it was back when the Nation of Domination was still running
Yeah.
around there at the WWE. And Stone Cold delivers this very nicely delivered burn slash comeuppance for those two pilots.
Hmm.
And okay, and I'll get back on point here. When Stone Cold says to Farouk, "It's not a race thing. It's not a color thing. It's not a white. It's not a black or white
Yeah.
thing. It's a kick your ass thing."
Yes.
That for me was really that was like yeah, because even in the '90s there were still some issues between the races and everything. Like people, white people, unfortunately,
That
it's
stuff
not
you
nice.
can't do now. You can't do that stuff now. Like the stuff you do in
No,
Attitude, you cannot do now.
yeah, exactly. But Stone Cold was able to deliver that piece of dialogue and tell it to Farouk, and he owned it.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that Stone Cold brought us throughout his career.
Yes. Yes. I like that. I like. Well, speaking of Nation domination, the one thing I liked about when The Rock was part of Nation. Do you remember that time when
Hmm.
The Rock got a text and he checked and Stone Cold was behind him and he beat the crap out of The Rock?
Hmm.
on his beeper. No, they didn't have cell phones. They had beepers back then, right? And the Rock got a beeper, and the
Hmm.
Rock and it said Austin 316 on the beeper, and Austin beat the crap out of the Rock. I'll show you the clip. I'll find it for you some
Yeah,
point.
absolutely. Please. Well, I think. Well, I've actually seen that clip
Yeah.
where Stone Cold just kind of dresses down Farouk,
Yes.
and Farouk's coming back at him, and Stone Cold's he's not having it. You know, and I have to say, one of his signature things that he did was the bear smash, and he gets up on on that corner turnbuckle, the middle rope or the middle turnbuckle, and he takes those two bears and smashes them, and
Yes.
you see him just seemingly chug them. But the fact is, he's drinking mostly suds, and you don't get that intoxicated just off of the suds. And
It was very light beer. It was
oh
very
yeah,
light beer
that
that he was
too,
drinking.
that
Cause
too,
it,
yeah. Mhm. Well, because like I said, he was playing a persona, but he also wanted to be authentic with it, and he didn't want the people to think he was being fake or phony with them.
mm-hmm.
And I don't think anyone in any of those stadiums or was watching on TV would think, well, yeah, of course he's going to get loaded. It was all a persona. It was an act, but it worked.
I mean, if he was loaded, the stuff he could do loaded. If the stuff he was doing in the ring, he can't do drunk.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
seriously, you can't. It's not possible to do drunk. But yeah, look, Stone Cold was amazing as a wrestler.
Oh yes.
Do you remember the time? Like, I remember a time when he was the sheriff for about a year. When
Yes.
Sheriff Austin, there was Bischoff was the GM.
Well, yeah, and then Linda McMahon, because Stone Cold and Linda McMahon, they worked together behind the scenes quite a bit, trying to work
Oh
with
yes,
him and everything to figure out how they could keep him in the WWF, even though he couldn't technically wrestle. And he was co-general manager with
yeah,
Bischoff. He was the sheriff. He did that sheriff role two or three times. He would guest referee. He'd do all sorts of stuff,
yeah,
but he didn't he didn't see it as necessarily demotion because the his fan base and just the fans in
yeah,
general for the WWF, they responded very well to it.
yeah,
And it was one of those things where if they went too far with anything that they did with Stone Cold, nobody would buy it. So they figured out just how far they could go with a particular idea before they're like, no, this isn't true to the Stone Cold persona. It isn't true to who Stone Cold is as a person, just in general. And that's one of the really cool things because you really see how much work and how much time goes into just figuring out how are we going to create a storyline that people are going to resonate with and they're going to watch and they're going to watch these matches that are intersected with them. I mean, somebody, I can't remember who said it or anything, but I've made the same comment myself. Wrestling is essentially soap operas or daytime drama, or in this case, nighttime drama for guys. And
it is.
that is not necessarily untrue because who's the predominant audience for wrestling?
Guys.
Guys, essentially, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put a person like Stone Cold in a situation like that, it has the potential to do something really spectacular. And I think it very much did because you look at and you've mentioned this several times yourself, you look at the position that the WWF or the WWE as its own now was in financially,
Mm-hmm.
they were in bad trouble. And quite literally, this one guy came in and he was able to save their asses. And then he turned around and just kind of blew everybody's minds because I remember one particular story arc that they did was back during the whole invasion of WCW and ECW into the
Which
WWF.
which was not well received.
Yeah, I've done some digging into that whole scenario, and I think the biggest part that people really enjoyed was Stone Cold playing it like the Mister Nice Guy, like overly nice guy, where
Yes,
he wouldn't even punch a
he
person.
was showing more of his comedic side like early on.
Exactly, and that was something that people really resonated well with was Stone Cold's personality and his humor.
Yeah, because
And
you didn't see it much with him until that time,
nope,
especially with Kurt
and
Angle. It's like,
yeah, because here's the thing. It's tricky to play not only a babyface, but also an anti-hero and also do singing as well. But somehow or another they were able to make this work just in the best possible way to where the audience didn't get bored and they latched onto that idea and they ran with it, and that's why Stone Cold was able to have all the success that he had, even though, as you
I
mentioned, his career wasn't super long.
I agree with you earlier upon the Invasion until they turned him against WCW. I mean against WF when he joined Invasion. I think that was a mistake.
Mhm.
I think because I think it was a mistake to turn him against WWE against Vince McMahon. But because he did join Invasion, I think the reason they turned him because Triple H was out. Triple H was injured at the time. Remember they had a tag team. Triple H was out, so that was a major start out. Undertaker and Kane were like a tag team, and The Rock came back a little bit later in August. So I think they waited, and remember they had Kurt Angle turn on the WWE and join Invasion too. And then I also think one of the mistakes of the Invasion angle was not Stone Cold. They
Mhm.
didn't get the major top stars at the Invasion angle. They got DDP. He was a top star. Booker T. But they didn't get guys like Sting, Ric Flair, even Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Haas, Scott Steiner. They didn't get the guys like that into the Invasion
Mhm.
era. And, well, I don't think NWO would have worked in the Invasion era because NWO would not want to align themselves with WCW. Why would they? Like, that's not their
Yeah,
model. Like, that's not what they would do.
right.
And I don't, Sting and Invasions did ECW and WCW were heels. Sting doesn't work as a heel for me. Never does. They
No,
tried it before in WCW. It was terrible. Sting's not a heel. The only one I can think of, Ric Flair could definitely work as a heel because Ric Flair's a better heel than babyface. And Scott Steiner.
yeah, totally. Because both those guys, and I have to agree with you. Some people work well as heels, others just don't.
Yeah.
And you've got to have the right personality to make it all work. If you don't, you're sunk.
They tried with Sting like in the year in '99. They turned on
Mhm.
Hogan, and then it didn't work. Nobody. They tried with Sting, and then like a month later they turned back babyface. And WCW tends to turn a lot of people heel babyface, but not with Sting. Sting
Yeah,
was like a major babyface. They turned him heel, and they realized how bad it was. They tried it with Goldberg, you too, in WCW, and it didn't work with Goldberg. There's just some guys it doesn't work with. They're just
they're too hard edged. Their persona or their personality just doesn't match it, and it doesn't fit. And yeah, you're right. Sting, especially when he went through his whole crow phase, where he had the
yeah.
the makeup from the crow, or was designed after the
Even
crow.
Surfer Sting would not work as a heel. His original Sting.
Yeah, absolutely not. And you talk about Goldberg. He d- he would never really work as a heel either because it just when you've got a guy that's going up against the NWO going up against all these other heels,
Yeah.
it just doesn't jive. But when you've got Stone Cold, who is as you mentioned earlier in the stream, he's kind of an anti heel. He's more of an anti hero.
Yeah,
You can
he's a fan favorite to the crowd because he'll have the fans cheer him and he'll play to the crowd. He'll play to the crowd and he's there for the fans. But if you're a baby face, he'll stun you if you don't be
oh
careful.
yeah, because he as they
Yeah.
called him, he was the rattlesnake and was
Yeah.
one of the most
Don't.
predictable.
He said DTA. Don't trust Austin.
Well, and they also said DTA don't trust anyone.
Yes, true, true.
And I realize that a lot of the drama that takes place in front of the cameras doesn't take place off air or whatever. But I honestly had to sometimes wonder just how much animosity did exist between Stone Cold and Vince, just for the
from what I
amount.
know,
Mhm.
from what I could tell, there's the relationship is mostly fine. There were some times where they didn't see eye to eye on stuff, but it's not like it's not like we're it's, it's not. It's not serious because Austin's always been coming back to Vince. He worked with Vince. Like he does, he always comes back for shows on special shows for WWE. He has his own podcast on the network, and so I think the relationship is most of the time is mostly fine. There's no animosity between the two, and I don't even know there's animosity between him and Bischoff anymore. I think there was at one point. I don't think there is anymore. I'm not sure.
No, not particularly.
Austin would he look. What you see on TV, it does play a little bit of Austin's character, but when I'm watching him do podcast interviews or what he does outside of wrestling, he's a very good guy. He's a very nice guy. He's
he's very down to earth. He's very
Yes.
no nonsense. He's all those things that a lot of people gravitate to, myself included. And he would say things that you would not imagine any living person would say. You'd hear him saying, "You see, like what?" And he would drop these absolutely horrific. I mean, when I say horrific, I don't mean bad, but these absolutely horrific burns on people because he just did not give a crap about what anybody had to say or think, and he would just let it rip. And I have to admit, part of me is like Stone Cold in that perspective. Because once you stop caring what people really think about you and what they have to say, it becomes very, very liberating.
yeah,
It can't, and I understand it can be a problem for some people. I get that fact. But with Stone Cold, what he was able to do was he was able to take that very hard edged, biting humor and that no nonsense attitude and encapsulate into something that everybody really enjoyed, myself included.
yeah. He was definitely one of a kind, like a
Oh,
very
yeah.
different cat than what a typical wrestling icon like a Hogan or, I mean, like the Rock, the Rock. The Rock is it could be fun. He could cut promos to be fun, and he could be serious. I think if I compared it to, I think The Rock is better at cutting promos because Dwayne Johnson can just come up with things on his mind, like improv. He can do improv, by the way. I think Austin could do to a certain point, but I think The Rock might be the best all time in wrestling to be able to do it,
Yeah.
and that's why I think he's so good at acting,
Yeah.
and that's why
Well, because,
that's
well,
why I
here's
think
the other.
no disrespect to Batista. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Batista's better than Cena in acting. No, no, no. If Cena had more roles, serious roles, he'll do better than Batista because he's more natural.
Yes. Well, and here's the interesting thing about The Rock, and unfortunately, I wasn't here for your stream the last time.
That's okay.
But the thing with The Rock is this: he has enough charisma, and he's done enough acting, and probably taken some acting classes at this point.
Oh yeah,
That he can really pull off just about any role that he gets into. Now with Stone Cold, that's not
oh
really
yeah.
the
You could talk
case
about his
'cause he
movie
has-
career. You could talk about his movie career if you wanted, because he's been in movies. I know was he in the show Nash Bridges?
He might have been, but honestly, I don't know.
You remember that show
But,
Nash Bridges?
Oh yeah, I remember Dash Bridges very well with Don
me check.
Johnson. Yeah,
Yeah,
with
Don
Don
Johnson.
Johnson and Cheech Marin. Yeah, I remember it.
Let me check.
Um,
Austin was in it.
Now, I do remember that
Yes, he
Austin
was.
was a.
Jake Cage, season
Okay,
4 and
okay.
5.
All right, cool.
He was in.
And I
Yes, he
do.
was in that.
Mhm. Well, now, the thing I will say about Austin, I do remember a couple of his roles. One of them was, of course, the first Expendables with Stallone and all the old action
He
heroes.
was a villain. Yes, he was a
Yeah,
villain.
he was a villain. And you have that, I will say, very well choreographed fight between Stallone and Stone Cold's daughter.
Oh yeah.
And I have to think to myself, his dad is, excuse me, um, sorry, I had a brain fart.
We all do.
Anyhow, is it possible that when you've got a couple of personalities like Stone Cold,
He fits
and
right in that. He fits right in.
yeah, exactly, he does, and he doesn't pull any punches,
No.
even when he's playing the seemingly good guy. He will wail on anybody, and he will even wail on those that back him up.
Yes.
And that's what the audience, us, appreciated about him so much, is the fact that he gave no craps.
Hmm.
I mean, seemingly, he never wanted to see anybody get like legit hurt like he did. That was the one thing that I
No,
mentioned.
no.
Stone Cold was
He
very
was a
much
total professional.
yes. Well, and you consider his on air personality, and you consider how he is in private life. You would be kind of
Hmm.
surprised with that, but at the same time, you have to realize that in many of these instances, these people are playing a role or a part or whatever the case may be, and they are trying to make these characters part of themselves. And I think what happened with Stone Cold is that after everything that happened with him with his physical health and so on, he had to craft a very dynamic and a very imposing persona and everything on air persona for himself. And I think some people both that worked with him and maybe those on the outside would go, how can a guy that is seemingly such a decent, honest, and just good person do some of the things that Stone Cold did? Well, the thing you've got to remember is we all have various layers to our personality.
Dude,
It's
Ultimate
just the
Warrior was the ultimate good guy, and he's a total jackass jerk. I know he's dead, but I'm just telling you facts here. He wasn't a good
oh yeah,
person.
I get you.
And I don't like
Well,
disrespecting the dead like that, but it's true.
and that's the impressive thing about Austin
Yeah.
is he knows just how far to go that's believable,
Hmm.
and he knows where to stop when it's not going to be. And you see that very much play out in a lot of the stuff that he did throughout his career.
He, yes, yes, and like he was the most. I would say he's the most over guy in a short amount of time because of the neck injury. I think The Rock also too, but The Rock did on his choice because The Rock decided to go Hollywood, right? The Rock could have had a
Yes.
longer career if he wanted to, but he decided to go Hollywood. I think that was a good choice for him. Austin had no choice because of his neck, right? Like, if you think about it, the two most popular guys in wrestling did not have like a long career in WWE, ever. Think about it. Not even 10 years. They didn't even spend 10 years in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
Like seriously, and like Hogan Hogan had a long tenure in WWE, not in WCW, but that's because WCW did fold, right? But it did fold. So, uh, the wrestling these days, there's guys, wrestlers these days are over a decade in WWE. But those are the two most popular guys. Like, and I think Austin and The Rock, if Austin wasn't healthy and The Rock decided not to go to Hollywood, they would have had I don't know, 4 to 5 years at the top of the game because of how popular they are. Because Cena never lost that. Because, for example, Cena's at post Rock, post Austin, Cena became that guy. Cena never lost it. So I'm convinced if those two never left or got hurt, they would never lose it. And there's nobody else in WWE has that right now. I mean, they could try. They could try all they want, but there's nobody WWE has to a level where The Rock, Hogan, or even Cena is. And that's WWE's fault. It's not. It's you got to build stars. And what else? Yeah, Booker T. Oh yeah. I remember the grocery store back thing with the Booker T and Austin in the grocery store. Do you remember that? Bess, are you there? I'm gonna change my avatar. But yeah, so if anybody wants to check out Austin's stuff now, if you have Peacock or WWE Network, he has a show on a podcast on WWE Network or Peacock called Broken Skull Sessions, where he interviews wrestlers, past, present, wherever. He had who have off with the name of my head, off the top of my head. He has done from the past Undertaker. I think he's done Kane, Big Show, Godfather. Where else? Has he done Kurt Angle? Kurt Angle, I think. I think he did Triple H. I'm not sure. Or Shawn Michaels. He did Ric Flair. From the present times, current superstars, he's done Bayley, Sasha Banks, Drew McIntyre, and recently Bobby Lashley. Oh, he's also done Kevin Nash. And on September 26th, he's having John Cena on his podcast. Yes, John Cena on his podcast, if you're listening to me. And I'm going to give you, and he has his podcast, a list of, I'm going to give you a list of my 5 top wrestlers I want him to have on. Is not from 5 to 1. I got Charlotte Flair. Number 2, Becky Lynch. 3, Roman Reigns. 2. Who did I have at 2? CM Punk. And number 1, The Rock. He has to get The Rock on his podcast. And I'm going to create a poll here. What should I do next week? So yeah, so that's basically it, I guess, Ambassador, if you're still there. So yeah, check out Ambassador's channel if you can. Also, I'm doing an all-out prediction stream tomorrow for the AEW show. And then Friday night, I'm doing a SmackDown live watch along only because there's a title match that night. Sunday, I'm doing an all-out watch party for the pay-per-view. Make sure to order it. I think it's like $50. The matches are, we're going to see CM Punk back in wrestling. CM Punk versus Darby Allin. Kenny Omega versus Kristen. Miro versus Eddie Kingston. And you can check out my channel. Channel for that. The description below for that stream has all the matches lined up. And Monday is all about wrestling. I'll be reviewing All Out, and whatever wrestling news pops up. NXT news, of course. NXT rebranding. I don't. And what else? Oh yeah, maybe a Shang-Chi review coming out when I see it. And yes, I think that's it. I don't know if anybody else is having a show tonight. I'll take a look, whatever. Check out Bachelor's channel out. So next week I might do next week. I'm gonna probably do another one. I just don't know who yet. Maybe Rock and Austin. Maybe I'll go somebody not as popular, like somebody known, but maybe not as well known. Maybe I'll do like a Bret Hart or a Ric Flair. I'll come with somebody. I have a week, right? And so subscribe to Ambassador. Subscribe to me. Like, thumbs up. And before I go, and Ambassador, Ambassador, you back? Yes. So this is how you guys.
Too sweet.
Sweet.
Too sweet. Too sweet.
So that's how I feel. And if you're not down with my stream, the heck happened to it? I got rid of the clip. If you're not down with my stream, I got 2 words for you. Here. And also,
Give me a hell yeah. I said give me a hell yeah.
yeah, so enjoy the night, everybody. See you tomorrow. And I got to prepare for that. So, AWO and the Ambassador are out. Take care.